for my Lord. I am. I'm going in. I'm going in. I'm going in. I'm going in. For my Lord. For my Lord. For my Lord. For my Lord. And tell the Lord to cover me, cause I'm about to go in.
Welcome to another episode of Good Twin, Bad Twin Unleashed. We're your hosts, Alden, and I'm Calvin. Our focus tonight is the 2013 mayoral debate. As many of you already know, the office of mayor is one of the most important elected officials in the city. The mayor is responsible for setting the direction and the vision for our city. And as our name suggests, there are two sides to every debate and every issue. There's the good side, and there's the even better side. As my brother would like to say, the bad one. Our goal is to present both sides of the current cultural issues which our society contends with on a daily basis. Today, we're honored to have with us those individuals who are vying for the honor and opportunity of leading Jackson for the next 4 years. Now tonight, we can change the scope of the future and what it holds for our city. Tonight, we have the opportunity to impact the type of city that we can even offer to our children. We can challenge or reshape what the city will become from not just now, but 15 to 20 years from now. So tonight, help us refine the vision for Jackson. We'll start by introducing our moderator, C.J. Rhodes, pastor of Mount Elm Baptist Church, host of the C.J. Rhodes Show on WRBJ 97.7 FM, and the author of the book, The Kingdom Come, The Reflections of a Pastoral and Prophetic Ministry. That's right. He is also a graduate of University of MS, Duke University as well, and he is also the husband of Allison Thomas Rhodes. He will introduce the candidates.
Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you tonight to have a great and intimate conversation with these three contenders who are running to become the next mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. We want to, first of all, thank Good Twin, Bad Twin for allowing us the opportunity to share in this moment. And let me just outline a few of the game rules so that we're all clear. First of all, we will ask each of the candidates a introductory question, a question about who they are and what they represent and what their platforms are. They'll be given 3 minutes each to do that. Thereafter, we'll have questions that will follow up to unpack that, different things spoken about in those introductions. And you'll have a minute to unpack that, and then maybe 30-second rebuttals, or better yet, 30 seconds from other candidates to ask more questions about fleshing out that vision. Tonight, we hope to be more concerned about the three of you fleshing out your visions for those present and those who will be watching and listening later on. We will not get into ad hominem attacks. There will be no below the belt kind of things. We want to make sure that all three of you stay focused on the vision that you may want to represent to the city of Jackson. We're going to begin with a 3-minute introduction by Mrs. Quinn. Thank you, Pastor Rhodes, and thank you to the organizers of this debate forum. And certainly I am thankful to this church, this great church, for hosting this event. Again, I am Regina Quinn, and I want to be your next mayor of the city of Jackson. I'd love to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I've chosen to seek the office of mayor. Jackson is my home. I love this city. I have a passion for Jackson. I grew up on Ridgeway Street, that's in Ward 3. I attended Johnson Elementary, Brinkley Middle School, and Murrah High School. I graduated from Southern Miss in Hattiesburg. I got my law degree in New Orleans at Loyola University. I've been practicing law here in the city of Jackson for over 25 years. Started out with a personal injury law firm, Walker & Walker, and then I went on to the Attorney General's office. I was Special Assistant Attorney General. I represented the Department of Finance and Administration. I used to write Attorney General's opinions on the proper way to use public funds, making sure, making sure
that governmental entities were within the guidelines of the state procurement laws and bidding laws. I did that for a while, and then I started my own law firm. I co-founded Irvin & Quinn. We represented a number of businesses throughout this city and state. And in addition to that, after doing that for about 10 years, I became the first general counsel of Jackson State University. I was JSU's top lawyer, representing the president primarily and the administrative staff, particularly the cabinet, and dealing with all the legal issues involved in JSU. The work that I've done at JSU, I'm extremely proud of that body of work. That includes the development that you see on campus, from the Palisades to the Walter Payton Center to the Student Center, Campbell College Apartments, and the University Place where the Penguin now resides. But in addition to that, I was the key negotiator. JSU is now the proud owner of the Mississippi Veterans Memorial Stadium. I negotiated that deal, and JSU receives approximately $563,000 from the University of Mississippi Medical Center for their employees and to park there on the stadium grounds. They also are responsible for keeping up the paving of the parking lot and as well as the lighting there. But in addition to that, I've done some development work. I developed a 7-acre subdivision in Lakeover. It's called Lakewood Cove. I would be very pleased if you were to go out and take a look at what is going on over there in Lakewood Cove. It's a beautiful area. I saw an area that was just very pleasing to the sight, and aesthetically it was beautiful, and it was an easy decision to do that. Now, my vision for this city, I use the acronym IC, is infrastructure, safety, and economic development. We're going to deal with those issues throughout this program. But thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Attorney Lumumba.
Thank you very much. And I also want to thank Word and Worship and everyone else who has been involved in bringing this forum together. I think it's very useful, and I'm happy to see everyone who's here. My name is Chockwe Lumumba, right? And Chockwe Lumumba is an African name, just like Barack Obama is an African name, right? Chockwe Lumumba is not a Muslim name. It's an African name. I'm from the city of Detroit originally. I was born in Detroit, in the projects actually in Detroit. And after arising from the projects in Detroit, I went on to go to high school where I excelled athletically and academically, had a scholarship to go to college, was in college during the time of many great changes, during what we call the Black student movement, where we were fighting when King got killed. We were fighting for more affirmative action, more people to go to college, and we were very successful in doing so. For 47 years, I have been involved in human rights struggle, have had cases in 16 different states and 28 different jurisdictions when you count federal jurisdictions. I was Tupac Shakur's lawyer. I helped free the Scott sisters. I went out to the West Coast when the Rodney King thing happened and helped one of the brothers out there in the city of Chicago when 16 young black men were falsely accused of a killing, and they would have all been executed. Me and 15 other attorneys interceded in that situation, and we were able to win that case. All over the country, I've been involved in human rights activities. I think that one of the primary characteristics that I gained from this work is that when I came to Mississippi, and as I've been in Mississippi for 30 years, so I've been here long enough to live here on Prosperity Street and Aberdeen Street. I've been here long enough to live in North Colony, and I've been here long enough to live in Woodley and on Lynch Street and various other places. But one of the beautiful things about the work here has been that I have been engaged in situations for change. Change is part of what I do. It's part of what I've done for a long time. And so I've challenged situations which are unjust. And so when we came in 1993 and realized there had never been a black mayor ever in the city of Jackson, I was part of an organization called the Grassroots Convention that organized to eventually get a black mayor. When we came in just a few years ago and realized there had never been a black sheriff of Hinds County, I lent a lot of efforts to that effort, and we got a black sheriff. When Katrina came and thousands of people died on the Gulf Coast, I stepped up to the plate and was able to take tons of material and food from all over the country. Had not I been connected over the country, I probably would not have been able to achieve that. But we were able to bring tons of material and food down to the Gulf Coast, as well as to Jackson, where many of the survivors were. And so this kind of activity is the kind of activity I've done for a long time, and it's prepared me to be a proven leader, a leader which has been leading for 47 years in various different things on the international level, on the national level, and on the local level. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
I'd also like to thank Bishop Stallworth and the Word and Worship family for having us here in this beautiful facility. I also want to thank the organizers of this event tonight. This is important business. We've got a big decision to make a week from Tuesday, and I'm so proud that so many of you came out, thought it important enough to come out and hear what the three of us have to say. My name is Jonathan Lee, and I too would like to be mayor of the city of Jackson. We've got a lot of changes to make here. I grew up here as well. In fact, my parents brought me home from the hospital on Meadow Lane in this very ward. I grew up in Lakeover. In fact, the space where Miss Quinn built her subdivision were the trails where we used to ride our bikes, you know, and get in trouble. But for the last 11 and a half years, I've been running a second-generation family business. I've been very proud of my work there. For those of you who've worked with your family, you know it's a labor of love. But with that, living here, being an adult here, I began to develop a new understanding of this community that we live in and a new appreciation. So I thought it important enough to take a leave from my job and come and fight for change for the city of Jackson. You know, I've had an opportunity to give back to this community that has given so very much to me. I learned to swim at the YWCA on Ferris Street. And when I came back here, it had closed, so I decided I would go down the street and join, at that time, soon-to-be Mayor Frank Melton at the I.S. Sanders YMCA. I've also done work with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, Midtown Partners, lots of different things in terms of nonprofits. I have some experience as well on the business end. I was on the board of directors for Wachovia Bank until it was taken over by Wells Fargo. I currently sit on the board of Baptist Hospital, where I oversee, along with 12 others, a $400 million budget and 3,000 employees. I, like many of you, have tried to make changes from the outside. I've tried to do what I could to make this city the great place it can be. But I've decided that what we need just now is an advocate within City Hall to make the kind of sustainable changes that'll put this city back on the right path. I look forward to sharing more ideas and visions for this great city that we all live in. Thank you very much.
And thank the three of you for your introductions. Let me make sure that it's clear to the audience that there are about 14 candidates running for mayor. There was an invitation extended to the incumbent. He had a scheduling conflict. But as most in the city will say, you three are the top three alongside the incumbent, and so we have an opportunity to hear more from you. Ms. Quinn, you began to talk a little bit about your IC platform. Okay. First of all, let me clarify these color signals. The yellow card means you have 1 minute remaining and 15 seconds remaining if you see the red card. So, thank you. All right. Sorry about that. So again, Ms. Quinn, you were beginning to talk a little bit about your vision. Could you unpack that for us now?
IC is infrastructure, safety, education, and economic development. We have got to deal with the litter in this city in terms of the cleanup. The visual impact of the city is just something that we've got to deal with, because from an economic standpoint, what does an individual or a business see when they're coming into our city and they want to do business here? They need to see something that's inviting. So we need to clean it up. We need to deal with the crime within our city as well. We got to deal with that from the police department, reorganize the police department as well from the top to the bottom, have a system where we are actively recruiting the best possible officers and make sure that we're training them as well. In addition to that, we need to have a clean and safe environment for our children. That way we can bring businesses into our city and create an economic climate that's conducive to creating some economic stimulus and growth.
Thank you. If the organizers will allow me, can I ask a follow-up question to Mrs. Quinn? Of those 4 different things you mentioned, which of those would be the most important? How would you get it done if you became mayor?
I think it's the environment. The first thing, obviously, is to clean up the city again. We just have a lot of litter. Do that. Deal with the abandoned houses and the abandoned buildings within the city. Those structures that we can renovate, we want to do that. Those buildings that we cannot renovate, we need to demolish and then remove. I've gone out throughout the city of Jackson. I've seen a lot of structures demolished, and what we find is that they just sit there. You can tell that they've been sitting there for years and years. So we need to remove that debris from the communities. But in addition to that, I believe that if we created what I call an environmental court, that would be helpful as well. They do that in Memphis, Tennessee. And the environmental court would be such a place where when there's a violation of code violation, housing, health, then those persons would have to come into a court and then address the issues to make sure that if they don't do what they're supposed to do, then there's some punitive side of that as well. And that environmental court judge would be able to levy whatever sanctions that are appropriate within the guidelines of state law.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lumumba, you talked a little bit about your lifelong experiences with justice and equity issues. How would the Lumumba administration embody that kind of perspective?
Well, first of all, we've mentioned some things about the police department. The police department seems to be dissatisfied and morale is low because they don't feel they're treated fairly. In the Lumumba administration, there's not going to be any police officer treating other people unfairly. There's not going to be any police officers treated unfairly. There's not going to be hearings which make no difference, which are just staged in order to put police officers off their job or to discipline them, even if they have not done anything to justify that. So those are the kinds of things that will, and injustice throughout the system. We have, believe it or not, people who are going to EEOC now on this administration. We have people who are being treated unfairly in this administration. And so what we have to do is to correct these problems, and those are one of the things that I would do. And my view is that we have a holistic approach to curing our problems in Jackson. It's a holistic problem. And so the holistic approach starts with the infrastructure. And we talk about water, roads, sewage, and things of that nature. We have to not outsource the work on infrastructure, but we have to give our people jobs who live in Jackson in order to repair the infrastructure. It does 2 things. It does the kinds of things that Ms. Quinn talked about in terms of beautifying the city, but at the same time, it gives us jobs. The only way to have prolonged improvement of the city is to increase the income of the people in the city and increase the ownership of the people in the city. That's the only way to do it on a prolonged basis. And so that's why my system or my platform, not just my vision, but my platform, would cause for us to invest in the infrastructure to make sure that we get Jacksonians working on the infrastructure and curing those problems. Curing the economic problem will help address the criminal problem. If people have jobs, and then the second thing, if they have education, this is certainly going to help our situation. It's going to help improve our conditions, and it will cut down on crime. Crime also has to be confronted with a firm but fair police department, and those are things that I will certainly step up to the plate and address.
Okay. You talked about infrastructure just like Mrs. Quinn did. There have been conversations about the dwindling tax base. You said you would invest monies in repairing infrastructure. How would you do that? You know,
we got to have stimulus. We got to have stimulus. And so stimulus, first of all, we have to have a revenue stream to kickstart this investment into the infrastructure. And so what are those going to be? First of all, we got to reorganize the way we use the money we have now so it would have a stimulus effect. If we are correcting things which are going to bring in income, then those things can bring income back to us. If we're paying workers, that's a stimulus effect. Just like I argued in front of the city council when we got wage increases for city workers, and what do you know? Before we knew it, our sales tax dollars went up because of people, in my theory at least, the people who we were underpaying were able to buy a little more at the store, therefore our sales tax dollar went up. There's the same kind of stimulus effect you can have with the young people. 1,200 to 2,000 young people come out every year to apply for city jobs. We only hire 250 of them. We need to hire all 1,200 to 2,000 of them because, first of all, you only have to pay them for 2 months anyway, and during that 2 months' time, the money you give them, they're going to give right back to you. They don't even have the cars to go to other places in order to spend their money, so they're going to spend it right here in Jackson, And then they're also going to get a work discipline, a work attitude, which is going to serve them well coming out of high school, going into the work market. So those are some of the ways that you kickstart your investment into your infrastructure, and then you have to keep it flowing by not outsourcing but insourcing. Right.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, the two candidates next to you probably have between them about half a century worth of experience. You're much younger, and so some would argue that you're less experienced. Could you defend or not defend whether or not you have the experience that they would have in order to be the next mayor of the city of Jackson?
Well, you know, experience is certainly important, and I do come to the table with some experience. But I think probably the most important thing that Jackson needs just now is a connector, a mayor for everyone. I think the opportunity that we have here in Jackson is this tremendous amount of goodwill that we have throughout the community. There are so many good things going on, and they're all spinning around in their own little orbits. We have limited resources, and we have limited personnel. And I believe what we're going to have is a facilitator that can help create a comprehensive plan for all of our social problems, all of our economic problems, all of our crime problems. And we've got to encourage everyone to put their passions to the wheel to get it done. So, you know, as we drive around this community and we see some of the problems that we face day in and day out, crumbling infrastructure, streets, you know, folks who are having to deal with drainage issues. We understand that we've got to really, you know, begin to focus on what we call those core issues. We want to focus on, of course, crime, opportunities for employment, rebuilding the infrastructure, and education. And we want to focus on those things by making sure that we're using every available resource in this community. I believe at the end of the day that responsibility has no age. You know, experience is important. Of course, you know, most of you all know I have a business background, and that's important. But what's more important is to be out in the community, having a feel for what's going on, realizing that we've got to change the paradigm. You know, it's not enough to do things to people. We've got to do things with people. And that's going to take the kind of leadership that can coalesce the entire community.
You talked about using every available resource to make certain things happen, particularly your core. What does that mean? Unpack that. How would you invest resources?
Well, you know, of course, the city has a great deal of resources, but so do the churches. So do many of our nonprofits. Let me just give you an example of what I am talking about. I talked to a man who runs a homeless shelter here in the city of Jackson. He applied for a federal grant and realized that he needed a certain designation to the city. He goes down to City Hall to get that designation, and he's told, we can't give you that designation because we also have access to that grant. And we know that when you compare your outcomes to our outcomes, that at the end of the year, we're going to be in trouble. That is a prime example of where maybe the city needs to redefine their role. Because at the end of the day, it's all about outcomes. What we've got to do is maybe be the facilitator of all of those organizations that are providing that service. And maybe we use our bandwidth to connect what they're doing and measure the outcomes, and use our ability as a city to get federal monies to feed into what they're doing.
As I talk to people around the community, there's a sort of frustration with the state of the city. And there are people who are possibly looking for someone new to be the mayor this year. The problem has been they're not quite sure who that person could be or should be, and no one has really kind of made the strong enough case that they would be a better mayor than the one sitting at City Hall now.
The reason that someone should choose me over the other candidates is because looking at what Jackson needs right now, and the best choice for this city is me for a number of reasons. And I will start with this. This, again, is my home. I have a passion for Jackson, a compassion for the people of this city. And I know Jackson. I know Jackson. I have either lived and or worked in every ward of this city, or have some deep connection to. I have been through this city, not just as an attorney. I'm a business attorney. I understand what it means to have a business to create economic stimulus and growth within our community. I understand what's needed when the city of Jackson is looking to do things that may not necessarily be within the guidelines, and the officials, whether they be the mayor or whether they be city council members, don't quite know where the parameters are. And I've mentioned an example some time ago when the city had an item on its agenda, and if the city council had voted on that agenda, they would and voted positively for the persons to receive public funds, then those city council members would have been personally liable for that. And as a matter of fact, I contacted the candidate, Chockwe Lumumba, and I advised him that if you vote yes on that, and if something comes up down the road, you would be personally liable for it. And he appreciated that some number of years ago. The other thing is this.
Before y'all started running for mayor.
Yes.
Okay.
It's been some number of years ago. So I'm a business lawyer, and that will help in terms of understanding what's needed from a business aspect for the city. But also, I'm a businesswoman. I'm a developer. I'm the only person within this race that's actually started and completed a development project from beginning to end. I saw a raw piece of land, and I envisioned a community there with sidewalks, with neighbors coming out, not just reading about their neighbors, but knowing their neighbors, and just being in an environment where people would come out and get to know each other. And I would tell you from beginning to end, I did that. And the other thing is this, I would just add, it is, you won't see any water and sewer and drainage problems in Lakewood Cove. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Well, I want to assure my sister Quinn that I always will appreciate good advice for her. Even in the mayor's position, when I'm in the mayor's position, I still want her to give me that good advice. And we will receive it and we accept it. Let me say this. I've been in Jackson for 30 years. I think that's long enough. I think my IQ is high enough to learn Jackson in 30 years. I knew Jackson when we challenged the Scott sisters being in jail. And so that's why we were able to be a connector. We connected with some of the people who really had the least in common with us politically. We connected with the students at Mississippi College, and we helped get them out. That's why we were able to connect not only with cross-racial lines and everything in the Katrina situation, but not only here, but nationally. Sometimes it helps to have national connections. That's why when in 1990, and the Klan was about to march in Jackson and disturb a lot of our children, we not only organized 800 people from the black community, but 100 people from Millsaps, and we took to the street in a peaceful demonstration, and we were able to discourage the Klan from marching through the city. And so I have definitely been in the position of being a connector. I understand that. That's why I got the Freedom for Fear Award up in Minnesota with thousands of white people, as well as some blacks and some Hispanics who presented that award to me because of our work on the anti-racial profiling ordinance. So we know how to work with folks across racial grounds, across every kind of grounds that you can imagine. But the point is, what are you accomplishing across those grounds? It's one thing to work with folks to achieve a result, but are we going to achieve a result which is detrimental to the poor, detrimental to a particular group or something of that nature? Or are we going to achieve a result which is progressive, which looks forward? And so I think that the proven leadership, that's important, because you don't always know what you're going to do if you haven't been there before. I've been there many times before. Okay.
Thank you.
You know, it's a very good question. You know, how do you stand out against an incumbent mayor who has been mayor many, many times? And I'll be honest, on the way here, I was having a conversation with a citizen who was talking about this question of experience. And she said something that I told her, you'll definitely hear it again because it was a very good comment. She said, you know, if this is what experience gets us, then I don't know if I need any more experience. And where we are just now is this is a very important race, and the city is near the tipping point. And I think for those of you who've been following this race, you understand that I have in-depth knowledge of what's going on within the city. In fact, this current mayor appointed me to his transition team, overlooking business matters for the city. I've sat on the city's water committee, and we've got a $1.3 billion problem right now that we've got to face down. And it's going to take not only being a connector, but having a grasp of the details and being able to make calculated decisions so we don't continue to sell our folks down the river. This election is very important. And, and it's not going to be a one-sided kind of person. It's got to be a multi-dimensional person that understands not only business, but understands the intricacies of this community, and also understand how vitally important it is that we get every part of the community involved.
For more information on Good Twin Bad Twin Unleashed, go to www.goodtwinbadtwintv.com or log on to Facebook and type in Good Twin Bad Twin or email goodtwinbadtwin_unleashed@yahoo.com.
Chapter 10, first book of Zechariah, he prophesied about how they would crucify the Messiah, and they did, but he rose on the
Thank you. I've heard a couple of you talk about the state of the city. We're at a pivotal place. This is a turning point, and this is a very critical election. Some people know about the bad streets and maybe crime, but may not know that the city, in your estimation, is as bad as you think it is. Could you spell out why you think the city is in such a bad shape, and why you would be the person to help get it, to borrow the mayor's language, back on track?
Yes, I can tell you that. And I can tell you that because, again, I know Jackson. I've been meeting the people in Jackson, going out into the neighborhoods. I was invited into a neighbor's house, a lady in South Jackson. And the condition of her yard, the condition on the edges of her home, was just sad, quite honestly, because the water, because of the ditch there and the drainage there, was getting to a point that it was just eroding and being harmful to her property. So the condition is bad. And the other fact is this, it is a fact that we have a $1 billion infrastructure problem. Now, how I can help with that, this is about relationships. It is great to have a great plan, and we have a great plan, but the devil's in the details in terms of being able to get those plans implemented. I have the relationship with the state officials in order to get that done. I worked in the state. I've been practicing law here for a number of years in an arena where it was, I just had an opportunity to work with Jim Hood. I was there when we both worked together for Mike Moore. I also worked with State Treasurer Lynn Fitch. Those are two persons that serve on the State Bond Commission. So when the state of Mississippi, when the city of Jackson needs to have a bonds issued, then I know two of the members of the Bond Commission. But in addition to that, I worked with then Lieutenant Governor, now Governor Phil Bryant, for the Jackson State deal. I had to go in and make the case as to why Jackson State deserved and needed to have that stadium. And initially, it was not favorably looked upon. But after discussion and having a discussion about not what's right for the, Jackson State, but what's right for the capital city, we were able to get that done. So I can get it done because I have the relationship with people in order to get it done.
Thank you.
The question was the condition of the city. The condition of Jackson is such that we are at the crossroads, a dangerous crossroads. And we can see that if you've been around other cities and other states, we see that's the case. Right now, Jackson's a city which has the demographics of a lot of other cities like D.C., Harlem, Gary, Indiana. And what has happened in those cities is they've had a tremendous fall, in many instances, at least as far as the predominant, what was an African-American population in those cities, is that they have been beset by gentrification, okay? Rather than really correcting the problems of the city, rather than really curing the economic employment problem, rather than really getting people jobs so we lift up the bottom and everyone has a comfortable living standard. What they have done in those cities is they have eliminated a portion of the population from the city, pushed them to the outskirts, where first of all there becomes conflict with the people in North Jackson or people in South Jackson. And then the people in North Jackson and South Jackson begin to move because their situation is not getting any better because of renters and things of that nature, right? That is a terrible situation to get into. And it really does not benefit anyone in the final analysis because it does not improve the overall economy of the city. It does not improve the overall economy of the region, which includes the city. All it is cosmetic economics. We are dangerously close to that if we don't have the kind of strength and fortitude and insight and wisdom in order to confront that, and that's what we need, and that's what I can provide. There's no question about that. I've seen it enough, I understand it, and I know the people who can work with us in order to avoid it. And that involves people who are here in Jackson, that involves those people that is in the legislature, and that involves people on the national level. That's what I do. That's what human rights activists do. They organize. Remember another fellow they used to call a community organizer, you know, when he ran for president, and they disdained that position? But that's what I do. I organize. Right.
Thank you.
You know, it's such a comprehensive question. If you allow me, I'll give you an example, because I mentioned earlier that we do have a comprehensive plan. But one of the crucial elements, I think, in our community right now is this idea of whether or not our community is safe. Well, I'll tell you this. I don't think people get caught up on statistics. What they get caught up on, the fact, is how they feel. People make decisions on where they're going to work, where they're going to shop, where they're going to eat dinner based on how they feel. Crime is an issue in this community. And what specifically am I going to do about that particular issue? I'll give you an example. We talked about our police officers and how they feel like they've been treated unfairly. We have one of the highest attrition rates in the southeastern United States. The city has told us that we need about 500 police officers to patrol these streets. And we've reached that once in the last 15, 20 years or so. We've got a lot of work to do. I believe that change begins with leadership. And that has to also be the case at the police department. We've got to have the kind of chief that's going to understand the intricacies of rebuilding the team, you know, rebuilding the workforce. And right now, the workforce is crying out. So what we're going to do is we're going to reset the stage. We're going to take the administrative duties that, you know, and eliminate some of these issues that we have with, you know, promotion. Some of the overtime issues. You probably read about the fact that we're being sued for not paying overtime once again. And we're going to put those under the mayor's office with an administrator. And then we're going to give our police chief an opportunity to be out there in the foxholes, really having a feel for what's going on in our communities and really understanding where the rubber meets the road in terms of how our police officers function and how they feel. We've got to begin rebuilding the people of this city, and it begins with our workers.
Last question. If you were elected 4 years later, what would be the one word that would define your administration? One word.
Accountability.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lumumba?
Forward.
Okay.
Resourceful.
Thank you. We're going to turn it over now to the audience questions.
First of all, we'd like to thank everybody for your patience. This is going to go a little bit faster, candidates, because of the fact that you will have 1 minute to answer the question. Now, this situation will start again in the same sequence that we went with, but you'll have one question. And of course, Mr. Rhodes, if you see a rebuttal question, you had the right to chime in and ask that question. But again, you have 1 minute on the response, okay? All right. I want to go back to, first of all, to a question that Pastor Rhodes just asked, okay? We talked in terms of what was your vision, okay, on decreasing the student dropout rate in the public school system, which was about 47%. And each candidate addressed it. What I'd like to hear you say is a more articulate plan in regards to how we improve education in the city of Jackson that would span across Mississippi. Because as we stand right now, we could pull the statistics of where our educational system is, and I'm not going to bore you because I know you guys know that, but I want you to answer that and specifically,
and in a more practical way. You mentioned the superintendent, but what does that look like to an average Joe? Bring it down a little bit further, because we want to know every day, what does that look like with your plan, improving education? Not the big picture, but everyday plan. What is it?
Will you clarify your question a bit in terms of what does that look like? What do you mean by what does that look like?
Your plan for
Okay.
education, improving education, because we're ranked. How would you improve our rating from 47% out of 50 states?
I do have a son in Jackson Public School District, and he's in the 8th grade in that McWillie Montessori School. And McWillie is a good school, but when we go into the middle school arena, there's not one high-performing school. So the question is, what do we do in terms of that? We've got to have transformational leaders in terms of that. The superintendent certainly has to have a plan. We talked about pedagogy. We talked about, in terms of medium, how we teach our kids. It has to be certainly instructive for us, for the student. And it has to be dealing with a 2013 student, and again, not a 1965 student. We have to do that. What we cannot do, we certainly cannot have a situation where we're not giving the resources that are due to our school system. We certainly must do that as well. There has to be accountability. There has to be engaged in all the resources that we have, academic as well. JSU and all the higher ed institutions that we have in helping to implement and formulate a plan. The plan has to be developed, but it's engaging all of the resources that we have in order to get that done.
Yeah, you know, the things that I suggested were kind of specific, and a lot of these things I've discussed with the superintendent already, and the superintendent agrees with them, the pedagogy, for instance. I've experienced, I have children that have gone to Jackson Public Schools too. My son and my daughter went all the way through in Jackson Public Schools until they went to Tougaloo for one of them and Tuskegee for the other one. And I've seen pedagogy make a lot of difference because I've seen a special teacher at Davis Magnet School make a lot of difference in my son's life. And so when I speak of this, I'm not just talking theoretically. I've seen it happen. I've seen the pedagogy change his life and change his interest in school. Secondly, when we talk about the motivation behind the curriculum, this is not theoretical. If you study school systems around the country, you'll see that it has made a lot of difference when our people can study who they actually were and study a honest history, not just a superficial history. Those things are very important. And I've seen it too because I've run a youth program, a mentoring program for 20 years. We've sent hundreds of young boys to school. To college, you know, from experience from the Jackson Panthers basketball organization, using mentoring, talking to them about their history, talking to them about where that term Panther comes from and things of that nature. So, and then finally, as far as the money is concerned, I think that we have to study that and see that it's being properly prepared.
You know, for me, it goes back to, you know, being accountable. And at the end of the day, if you're unhappy with the schools, then you should be unhappy with the school board. If you're unhappy with the school board, you should be unhappy with the mayor. And we've, of course, got to make good quality appointments to the school board. But how we function in City Hall in the future compared to how we function now is that we are going to go a step further, and we're going to dedicate a liaison between City Hall and the school district. And we're going to be bringing people to the table on the regular basis to talk about what those big issues are in our community and how is your community service organization addressing those issues. And we are going to come up with a comprehensive plan where everybody can put their shoulders to the wheel. The idea is simple as this. If you've got an organization, a Girl Scout troop, a Boy Scout troop, a church group, and you're looking for a community service project, we as a community ought to have a plan where you can fit in a comprehensive manner, a plan by which we can measure the results so that we can get grant monies to reinvest back into those kinds of programs. We've got to be accountable. Just like we have a person going out there recruiting businesses, we need to have a person out there waving the flag for our public schools.
Let me ask Mr. Quinn, excuse me, I'm gonna start with Mr. Lee. I wanna ask you something. You said we have to have that plan, okay, and a comprehensive plan, and almost sounds as if, where does that plan come from?
The plan comes from the community. Here's what I see. I see a lot of different people doing a lot of great things. A lot of resources being spent in this community, all over the community, whether it's in churches or whether it's in nonprofit groups, whether it's at groups aimed at girls or boys. We have all of these resources. Imagine how much stronger we could be if we were all singing from the same sheet of music, not duplicating services, but extending services. The plan has to be community-based. However, the plan has got to be led by our superintendent of schools.
Okay. Mr. Lumumba, in your plan, how does that, because most of you candidates we're looking for implementation. What is that? It's still not down enough, far enough in the woods.
Okay, well, I think that's a very good question. First of all, what we have to have to implement a change in pedagogy and a change in which means teaching methodology and a change in curriculum is we need workshops. We need to sit down, first of all, and study the types of curriculum and the types of pedagogy which work in school systems. And then what we need to do is have workshops. We hire people to come in and who hold workshops for parents, for students, for administrators, and for teachers. We begin to educate them as to some things that can be used to help stimulate the child's education. Do we realize that probably the greatest historian of our time is Lerone Bennett? Lerone Bennett came from Lanier High School. Yet none of Lerone Bennett's books are used in Jackson Public Schools at all, right? The greatest historian of our time comes from one of our schools, and we don't even use his books in our schools, right? That has all kinds of educational and actually economic implications, right? And so simple methodology is workshops. We need to install workshops which are going to address these different groups of folks and then therefore instill the kind of pedagogy and the kind of curriculum that we need into the school system.
Ms. Quinn.
I would start very close to home. I would go over to Barr Elementary School and speak to the principal there and ask her and sit and have a long, comprehensive discussion with community leaders and educators about how is it that she was able to get Barr Elementary from a level 2 to a level 5 with no additional funding. That's where I would start. Just look at the best practices within that school system, as well as making sure that we are engaging all of our professionals that are here and abroad. Again, Jackson State University largely teaches our students, our administrators. So if we have a problem in the Jackson Public School District, then we certainly have resources that we can go to in order to get those things ironed out and accomplished, from JSU to a number of the other academic institutions that we have in our city. Let's utilize what we have. That's where I would start.
Thank you. This will be our last question before we start our acknowledgments. What is your plan for changing the economic development in the situation in Jackson, Mississippi?
I have to go back to my vision for this city. Think again in terms of a business owner or a possible developer or a company that wants to move into the city of Jackson. They have to see an environment that's inviting. The issues that we're dealing with in terms of the infrastructure, the safety issue, the educational system in our city, all of those things are key elements to stimulating economic development. We've got to deal with those issues. There is no magic bullet. We've got to do the work. Those are the areas that we have to do the work, largely have to do the work on. But in terms of what we'll be reaching out to, that would be the things that are a competitive advantage. Academic institutions. We have students here that come in. We get them every semester. There are a number of college students here. So we don't have to have the issue of trying to get them here. They're here. We just have to keep them here. Do that with the STEM project. Do it with tourism. Do it with government and medical issues. Jackson is a medical city. It's been designated. Put the plan together and get that done.
I think that, at least as far as the discussion I've had on this issue, a real good question that you're asking there is how do you kickstart this economic development? I've been very specific. I said that the infrastructure is the new economic frontier. So by repairing the infrastructure, we create jobs. We create more business opportunities for the people who are contractors and things here. That's real specific. But how do we kickstart that? Where do we get the money for to repair the infrastructure? First of all, we look at our $350 million budget that we have every year, and we got to reorganize some of it. We got to have some different priorities than the priorities we have now. We have to be stimulus-minded. How do we put money in the hands of our people so they can give it back to us and help raise the sales tax dollar? And they can become homeowners, and so therefore they can help raise the property tax dollars. I think that those things are real important. And then also, finally, when we talk about that, we have to look at reasonable loans, because right now we got $400 million we got to pay over 17 years for the water system. So we got to look at reasonable loans on reasonable basis that we can pay back, that we can use to put into the system to kickstart the system. And then we have other things that have been discussed. But most of those other things in and of themselves are not adequate, like the 1% sales tax. That will help, but it's not enough. It's like $15 to $20 million a year and certain things like that. We certainly got to take advantage of those things, but reasonable loans and reorganizing the budget is a primary way that we have to go into kickstarting. And then we keep it by making sure that we don't outsource, but in-source. I'm sorry.
You know, I mentioned earlier our proactive ways or proactive strategies on how we retain businesses, but when we talk about recruiting new businesses, we have to start with our assets, and certainly Jackson has assets. You heard Ms. Quinn mention the fact that we have a very strong medical community, and that's actually a great economic development tool. Also the fact that we have a little over 40,000 college students attending class in Jackson every day. It is up to the city of Jackson to help come up with ways to separate those kids from their money. We have to build cottage industries around these assets, understanding that we have the state's only urban atmosphere, and that if we can help foster the kinds of place where we can retain those 40,000 college students, then we're ahead of the game. You know, that means making sure we are prioritizing the spending on sidewalks, because sidewalks are economic development tools. Public transportation also adds to the case for this urban atmosphere and being able to economically develop this community. But more than that, we have to build the case for business, understanding where the opportunities are, and we've got to wrap them up in a bow, and we got to start knocking on doors.
Okay, well, we want to thank you for that. What we'd like to do now is give you guys the opportunity to give you each 2 minutes to give a closing. But in your closing, what we'd like to know is, like, any last minute things that you want to wrap up saying. You have an opportunity to do so, but each, what we start with is Ms. Quinn, then again in the same order. Closing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, let's go the other way. Let's end with Ms. Quinn. Let's start.
Problem. It's been my pleasure to be here with you all this afternoon, and again, I want to thank the organizers of this event, and again, the folks who have opened up this beautiful church for us to come in and share our ideas. Once again, this is very, very important business that we're talking about. May 7th is going to be a big day in this community. Asking you for your vote, but again, I want an opportunity to earn your vote. It is not enough for us to recite what the issues are. You deserve solutions. So I'm encouraging you to go to our website or call our office. We've got some push cards out front, and take a look at our plan and understand that I'm the kind of guy that's going to come from behind the desk to implement those plans. You know, there is, I don't think anyone in this race who isn't in this for the right reasons. But, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're from here or whether you're not, how much you love Jackson. It's all about how we connect with the people and how we implement the plan. I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for your prayers, and we're looking forward to leading a discussion on how we renew our community. And at the end of the day, we have an army of 174,000 citizens to make this the place that it deserves to be. I hope that I'm the leader to lead that effort. Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask you to vote for me on May 7th of 2013 for the mayor of the city of Jackson. We are, like I have said before, at a critical crossroads, and it's important that we move ahead. Nothing stays the same. Either you're getting better or you're getting worse. And as we look at the situation in Jackson, there's no reasonable expectation that what we have done what we will do in the 13th year of the present administration is going to be any better than what we have done in the first 12 years of the present administration. It is important that we understand that as a point of departure. And then we have to look at who's best qualified at this point in history, a critical question to lead us forward. because we can't afford to play with this thing. We have to understand who is the proven leadership, who has stood up to the challenges, who have stood up to the great challenges which we've had over a period of many years and taken on those challenges and successfully resolved those challenges, not resolved them like the present administration has, but successfully resolved those challenges. And so I think that God has blessed me to put me in a position to do that. And who understands leadership, who understands where does the slogan come from? The people must decide. Educate, motivate, organize. Who understands that? And who really is going to listen to the people and feed into their work and their behavior the sentiments of the people as we move forward in Jackson? Who's going to bring Jackson to where it needs to be and make Jackson the leading force to bring Mississippi from worst to first? And I think that those are great challenges, and they're like some of the great challenges we've had before. And we need great leadership and important leadership which understands the nature of leadership in order to successfully meet those challenges. May 7th, Chockwe Lumumba, the brother with the African name, the same name that the brother who's in the president has.
Jackson, again, I'm Regina Quinn, and I am asking you to elect me as your next mayor. I am the person who is a native Jacksonian. I have a heart and I have a passion for this city. This is home. This is home for me. I'm in this race because I am concerned about our city. We are at a pivotal point, and it is about leadership, it's about capacity, and it's about the ability to get the job done. The question is, who is the best candidate to lead this city from where it is to where we want it to be? And I tell you, I believe that that is me. It is me because I've shown leadership, and I've shown it in areas that are germane to what it takes to lead this city forward. It is in economic development, it is in business law, it is doing the things within this community that are essential to having a quality of life for our children. I'm a mother. I am a person that strongly believes that education is where we need to focus our attention. And those things that we need to do to enhance the educational system, to create an economic climate, to create a safe city, those are the things that we will work on to move this city forward. So I'm asking you to trust Regina Quinn because you can. You can trust me and you can count on me to represent you, the working people of this city. I love you, God bless you, and on May 7th, I'm asking you for your vote. Thank you.
Let's give all the candidates a round of applause. We'd like to remind everybody, first of all, we thank you for your questions. We did try to get a chance to get around to all the questions. We will try to post some of those on our website so that, and try to forward some of those questions to the candidates to see if, I don't know if they have a format that they can present those answers to you, but we're going to try to get that information out to you. We didn't want to leave anybody out. You have a good night, and thank you for coming to visit with us.